He's a specialist on conflict resolution and humanitarian aid and an assistant professor of public policy at the Doha Institute of Graduate Studies. Tamer, good to have you with us again. So, look, the UN Security Council finally has passed this much watered-down resolution to get more aid into Gaza. But as Hani was just saying there in Rafah, much disappointment because it doesn't call for a stop in the fighting. Oxfam has described the vote as a dereliction of duty by the UN to protect civilians. What did you make of it, Tamer?
Darren, I mean, in essence, when the UN was formed, especially the new UN after the end of Second World War, it was supposed to tackle or prevent such similar conflicts like the one happening in Gaza. But let's not forget, I mean, the UN is still it's a political organization. It's an entity that's controlled by powerful countries, mainly the veto power holders countries. So politics are there in every policy, in every little detail of the UN work. And sadly, I mean, we have seen the US in particular, when it comes to this, to the Arab-Israeli conflict, always siding with Israel, losing its legitimacy, being even isolated, marginalized as a powerful country in the world stage now. And it's again, I mean, if we want to wait for the UN to resolve the Israeli, I mean, I don't think the conflict will be resolved through UN channels anymore. We need bilateral politics. We need something like the rule of the quartet to be revived again and look into the issues in Gaza, Palestine. But the UN is becoming irrelevant, marginalized, very politicized, and its mandate is being questioned now.
And that's an interesting point you make about the political power, the political players at the UN. I mean, Russia, for example, just minutes before that vote, Russia introduced an amendment to revert back to the text of the original draft calling for a ceasefire. This was vetoed by the US. Russia argues that, look, the current text gives Israel full freedom to clear out the Gaza Strip. The Russians are right, aren't they?
Of course, it's not even about the Russian. It's about, look at all the technocrats in the UN, including Guterres. Guterres is not a politician because he does not have a veto power. Himself, he's the head of the UN. Look at experts like Albanese, all these UN experts who have been saying or saying that what's happening in Gaza is genocide and it has to be stopped immediately and investigated. So you have the bureaucratic level of the UN all saying this is nonsense. I mean, you cannot continue doing this. We cannot keep providing aid under Israeli obstacles. There's so many obstacles to aid provision in Gaza. I mean, so what? You want people to be killed, massacred at the same time.
Feeding them.
Feeding,
yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I mean, when it comes to the practicality and operational aspects of this resolution, I mean, Israel is already in charge of the vetting process of aid. It's limiting aid amounts getting into Gaza because it has de facto control of the borders. It's slowing aid, and it's vetting every item. What else the Israelis want? What other guarantees do the Israelis want for them to be reassured that aid is not going to go in the wrong hands?
Yeah, and this whole issue of aid provision is really interesting, isn't it? Because it does beg the question, how do you then get more aid into Gaza to people who, as the World Health Organization says, are close to starvation if there's no pause in the fighting? I mean, it begs the question, is this resolution going to make any real difference on the ground, Tamer?
Sadly not. I don't think so. I mean, there is a history of previous even in UN resolutions on this conflict in particular, and Israel has totally ignored them. So it's a toothless resolution. It comes with no real mechanism to be enforced, even in its very weak format and shape now. There is no real mechanism to inform Israel to comply even with the resolution as it stands now.
So just a final thought to you then, Tamer. I mean, the World Food Programme has warned a couple of days ago that Gaza's close to a devastating famine if the war doesn't stop. We know over 20,000 Palestinian civilians are already dead. Israel says there'll be no cessation of hostilities. How do you see things playing out then in the next few weeks ahead into the new year?
It's gonna be very awful. I mean, yes, the situation is already dire. You know, many experts talk about famine, etc. I fear of an explosion again, like an explosion. Like, you know, it's like, yes, so many analysts talk about. I mean, we stopped talking about the transfer scenario, but if the situation reaches to a very dire level where people have nothing to survive on, it's still there. I can see it as a real scenario, and depending on how it's related to the conduct of military operations in Israel. If they keep pushing south, people will have no option but to go south, completely south, cross the border this time.
Into Egypt. Yeah. Tamer Qarmout, really good to get your thoughts and your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Tamer.